This, this is ridiculous. This is Umhlanga in the middle of winter. 25, 26 degrees mid-morning, no sign of a cloud anywhere. Dolphins frolicking in the Indian Ocean over my shoulder. There are not many better places in the world to be in winter than Durban, and not many places better to spend that time in Durban at than here at the Beverly Hills in Umhlanga. Overseen from a wine perspective by the great Miguel Chan, Mauritius's finest export, and here in the hands of a guy called JC, who we'll meet a little later on in the show as we have a look at what wine is proving popular at the Beverly Hills, particularly Durban in general. What are people drinking? What's popular? What do they like in this ghastly winter weather that is June in Durban? All that is to come. Also though, a couple of really cool adventures. Later on in the show, I'm at the Shortmarket Club with Bruwer Raats, not just the guy who's done so much for Shannon, but the guy who's driven Cabernet Franc into its status now as one of our premium single varietals, where in the past it was so often just seen within a blend. Why is Bruwer so big on Cabernet Franc? How is it making a difference? We find out from him at the Shortmarket Club a little later. First of all though, a story I've been so excited to tell. Berene Sauls, working our way through Hamilton Russell into her own label, is one of South African wine's most captivating stories, and it has a brand new chapter. She finally has her own land. It doesn't look much now, but in the next 6-7 years, this will be the land that gives her her very own vines, her very own grapes, and wine of origin, Tesselaarsdal. It's a fabulous story. I went out to go and meet her, see the land, and find out what's next for one of our most exciting wine entrepreneurs. Work your way through the list of the great wine regions of the world and get all the way down to the bottom, and you probably still won't find Tesselaarsdal, at least not yet. That's about to change because Berene Sauls, who's taken the Hamilton by storm with her fairy tale wine story, is moving into the next chapter. She's finally bought the land she's wanted for years, and yes, it doesn't look like much just yet other than a really cool collection of rocks. It is going to become, in just a few years' time, the brand new home to wine of origin Tesselaarsdal and take the story of Berene's into a brand new horizon. So I've got to skip in my step after that. You've just seen us strolling through the vineyards, as they will be. They might not quite look like vineyards yet, but it's just so exciting, Berene. I remember when you told me last year at Cape Wine that you'd finally bought this piece of land, and you were floating. And having been there with you now and been able to share your vision and see this starting to take shape, I can understand why it's making you quite so happy.
Yes, I mean, you've seen now we've been on the northeast facing slope. It's just the most beautiful views there, as I promised. And that is the future. We were just standing in history in the making and in the future happening.
We are now at your parents' home here in Tesselaarsdal, and that's such an important link because ever since I've known you, the brand of course speaks to where you grew up, but you've spoken about coming home with your wine.
Yes. So yeah, we are at the place where I was born and bred. I grew up here, and I'm always very proud to show my wines here. And it was very important for me coming back home, so to speak, because I love my history and my legacy and where I come from. And Tesselaarsdal, the brand, is pretty much, as you said, built on where I'm from. And where you are sitting now is literally where I'm from. I mean, we're in my mom and dad's presence. And it's the property where the vines is not far from here. I'm very proud to have shown this this piece of gold to you.
The first thing that struck me when we came in, your mum, who looks far too young to be your mum, came bouncing out to say hello in a garden that is so rich and green and perfectly done. And I think you're going to need some of that skill, some of that talent, because what we've seen at the moment, yes, there's potential, but at the moment it's a field of rocks, and there's a long way to go.
There's a pretty long way to go, but you know, I've got a great support structure, and my dad also nurtured and maintained the experimental blocks since we've planted in September. and he's been very instrumental in doing that and overseeing stuff because, as you know, I still pretty much do have a day job. And so, yes, my mother can definitely implement some of her green fingers on those new vines, 2 hectares being set up in the beginning of June. And from those vineyards, we will have a wine produced 7 years from now. Yeah.
Which preempts my next question. How do you have that patience? How do you manage your expectations? How do you keep going knowing that the horizon is so far in the future?
I actually search for vines where you can, isn't there something that can escalate the thing? You know, I wanted to order some super vines or something that can just like half the time. But it's definitely going to be worth the wait, Dan. And this whole Tesselaarsdal game wasn't a really short game. No, this is the 8th vintage actually we're tasting here today. And it has been a game of patience. It has been a game of seeing this brand develop and grow. It was a game of seeing each vintage own personality. It was also something that changed our lives significantly and the lives of my 2 sons. I'm a single mom of 2 boys. I'm trying to establish this first family farming generation for them. And every step, even the little ones, you know, even the empty borehole, the, the overall saltiness above 58 profile holes, every little step is a little victory for us. Everything is a little victory. If nothing is a hard no, then it's a maybe for me, and then it's a yes. And coming back to even taste here, where I grew up, and what is part of us and what is part of our legacy. That is something I love to share with my wines, my story, where I'm from, and the same with the vines. And as you said earlier, we will then take the experimental vines, or my mom wants it, and she will plant it here on the property somewhere, so that can also then interlink and be part of our story.
And that will be a great reminder of part of where you've come from, but the story goes back even further than that.
Yes.
And when you look back at Berene the childminder, Berene driving forklift trucks, Berene working on the floor of the cellar at
Still
Hamilton
working.
Russell, and still working there in between making your incredible wine, you always have a smile on your face. You're always so optimistic. You're always so driven. But it's sometimes even you just a little bit pleasantly surprised at what you've been able to achieve.
I still can't believe it, Dan. It's unreal. So even if I tell it to someone, I'm thinking, hold up, wait, what really? No, it's very surreal to me. It's everything, even the international trips that came with it. You know what I mean? It's very, very surreal. I mean, I would have never thought I would stand in Times Square, New York, you know. Wine brought me there. This whole journey, this whole opportunity that Anthony Hamilton Russell offered me, you know, while I was working there. And Anthony was the first person to recognize an ambition and drive in me. I mean, even probably I didn't see it at that time. And he just bulldozed forward. This is what we're going to do. Berene taste with us. And he just indoctrinated or pushed me into the wine business without me knowing really, because I just soldiered on and just get the job done type of thing. And I still have that get the job done kind of
Mentality.
thinking and drive. And that also comes from my mother, to be honest.
Well, she is one of many formidable women, clearly, in your family. And she's one I'd like to see again, because I'd like to extend myself an invitation. In 2030, looking, I'm sure, no older than I am today,
No,
I'd like
21.
to come back here, sit down at this table with you, and have a glass of that first wine from your very own vines. Can we do that?
No, we'll definitely have that. That's something I'm greatly, greatly looking forward to. And that bottle or that wine coming from that property in that 7 years will have blood, sweat, and tears in it, man. I don't think I'll even sell that first vintage.
There might be an argument or two from the accountant on that particular strategy, but it is going to make for a very emotional moment. So put that one in your diary, 2030, what is already one of the most phenomenal wine stories in South Africa. A fairy tale, even by fairy tale standards, is coming to a head 7 years from now, when on that patch of land we saw a little earlier today, Berene Sauls will produce her very first homegrown wine, and that is going to be an incredibly special moment. I'm not sure there is a more enthusiastic person in the wine industry than Berene Sauls. And when you have a look at that ground, it really doesn't look like much at the moment, but I know she is throwing everything into it. And we'll be back there in 6-7 years, as promised, to have a look at what it has become and to see the next stage of this journey of Tesselaarsdal. Now, until we do that, I've got many other things to get done, including hanging out and learning a bit more about the wine at the Beverly Hills. And Jean-Christophe Cazot is here as the kind of the wine master in the absence of that dodgy Mauritian you keep up at head office. JC, welcome. Lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And the accent is certainly not Afrikaans or otherwise.
No, it's not.
How do you come to be in South Africa?
Well, for love. What else?
C'est vrai?
C'est vrai. C'est vrai.
Wonderful.
I married a South African citizen, so that's how we came to live here.
Oh, brilliant. Well, it's lovely to have you here.
Thank
what
you.
about the wine industry? What has your wine journey been?
Oh, it started from an early age, being from a family of restaurant owners. So there's always been wine around and we've always been interested in it. And so it started, of course, with the French vineyards and the old world type of wines. And since I've moved to South Africa, I've started my journey in the South African wine industry, and I'm trying to learn as I go.
Now, often we look at the wines of Europe, of the old world, as kind of our benchmarks. We tried to learn from them. What's it been like instead learning from us?
Very interesting, very new. You have to approach it from my point of view in a very humble way, and trying to find your way through the different estates and what is being produced where and how. And I still have a lot left to learn because there's a lot on offer. But I'm enjoying every minute. It's a new discovery, a new learning. So it's very interesting, and I get to have a perfect excuse to drink some wine. So
We're going to taste this wine in a second. We opened another bottle of it a little earlier on. Before we do that, though, just give us a bit of a comparison. If I look at the Beverly Hills, I'm not really thinking Bordeaux or Burgundy in terms of climate, in terms of space. I'm thinking maybe the south of France, lots of rosé, lots of summer wine. Is that the sense you get from what people are drinking here?
the south of France speaks to me. It's my region of origin, so you're appealing to me right there. I think in KZN, from my experience, there's certain varietals that are very popular. Some of the well-known estates are also recognized, identified by the guest, and called upon as a safe choice. But I also feel that there is a growing interest in trying new things, different winemakers, different initiatives, and that the sky is the limit in KZN. I think it has a lot of room to grow, and for us as well here at the Beverly Hills.
I suspect I might be a little one-dimensional in my thinking, just describing rosé and light styles of wine to Durban, because the wine you've chosen is certainly not in that particular space.
Not at all. It's not in that space, and I've picked that wine for various reasons. First of all, we had Warren to do a wine dinner with us a few weeks ago, so it's a friendly shout out to him that I had met for the first time and was a very interesting character. Second, Neil Ellis is a well-known brand, well-known estate with a tradition of producing some fine wine. As well, the varietal I picked is Cabernet Sauvignon, which is one of the leading varietal here in KZN, and certainly at the Beverly Hills. The blends are also very strong, and Sauvignon Blanc as well. And I thought that specific wine I would not dare pronounce with my very poor African accent, but is a wine that I personally enjoy drinking. So I thought it ticked a lot of the boxes, and so that's why I brought this one.
I think it's an excellent choice from one of our great winemakers, both past and present, as the family story
tradition
continues.
goes on.
So we'll be having some of this in just a moment. When you look at more broadly wine within Durban, within KwaZulu-Natal, where do you think the wine industry is, and where is the potential to go?
I think the sky is the limit in terms of the potential. I think there's a growing interest in high-end wine. We see that customers are ready to spend on a good bottle, to have an experience particularly on the red side. A little bit more tentative on the whites, a bit more price conscious in this area. But again, this is not restrictive. I think it's growing as we're going along, and people enjoy wine. I found that South Africans really enjoy wine and have a very pragmatic approach to it. Wine needs to be enjoyed and in good company. So it's a bit different from the French, who will sit on the bottle and let it mature quite long and have a bit more of an intellectual approach about it. I find that there's really an enjoyment in opening a good bottle here and having it now and then, living in the moment.
And doing so often in closing with food. I've spent a number of nights here over the years at the Beverly Hills. The kitchen has always been a really big highlight. You've poured me some 2018 Neil Ellis from the Jonkershoek Valley. It's a beautiful vineyard. It produces some fantastic fruit. What meal from the Beverly Hills are we serving to do justice to this great cab?
Anything from our Sugar Club restaurant, fine dining, that would be a little bit stronger, not a light meal. Quite, you could go gamey, or you could have a red meat, a little saucy as well would be a good combination with this wine. I would not drink in with a light meal or with seafood. I think the balance would not be quite right. It would be a bit more ambitious as a pairing, but certainly any robust dish would do with this wine and complement it greatly.
Sounds like I have some research to do over dinner this evening. JC, merci bien mon ami.
Santé.
And lovely
Thank you
to
for
have you
having
here.
me. Cheers.
All right, as JC and I settle down to try some of that Neil Ellis Cabernet Sauvignon from 2018 out of the gorgeous Jonkershoek Valley, I'm heading off to somebody from Stellenbosch, but not in Stellenbosch. Instead, it is the Shortmarket Club in Rosebank. Luke Dale Roberts having loads of fun with the latest iteration of his Cape Town original. We sat down to talk Cabernet Franc, and a little bit more Cabernet Franc. It's a busy lunchtime in Johannesburg at a restaurant that is about to fill up. It is the Shortmarket Club, and in just a few minutes' time, this place will be swarming with wine aficionados in search of one of the great winemakers of Stellenbosch. Mention the name Raats, and immediately people get goosebumps, they get excited, they cannot wait to meet him. Unfortunately, Jasper wasn't able to make it today, so instead we've had to make do with Bruwer, but that's not a bad alternative. Bruwer Raats, lovely to see you.
Indeed, thanks, Dan.
I think it's taken about 4 years to finally tie you down, because as celebrity winemakers with packed schedules go, you're basically the Kim Kardashian of the industry.
Thank you for that, but I think I see myself as a simple farmer from Polka Dry Hills, you know.
Well, a simple farmer
I
who
walk
has...
among kings, but I still keep my common touch, you know.
We don't believe you, but we'll pretend to. A man who's making some terrific wine, which is what we're here to celebrate today. And people might think, well, if you're with Bruwer, we've seen him on social media. He's got this Chenin King handle. It must be Chenin Blanc that you are drinking. But in fact, it's the other half of the wine selection which you've become so well known for, and that is some Cabernet Franc, and it's wine which I know you're very passionate about, but also wine which I think South Africans over the last few years have really started to discover in its own right, as opposed to just a small component hiding in the shadows of a Bordeaux blend.
Very much so. You know, when I founded Raats Family Wines in 2000, there was probably not more than 5 producers that produce Cabernet Franc on a consistent base. So, and most people, there was only 0.2 percentage of a percent of the whole of South Africa that were planted under Cabernet Franc, and most people blended that away in a Bordeaux blend. But I was an assistant winemaker at Blauklippen, and after the harvest, I went to the cellar master and told him, "This is the most wonderful wine I've ever tasted, because it's got so many dimensions. It's got fruit, it's got spice, and it's got this lovely herbaceousness." And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Why don't we bottle this on its own?" And he said, "Well, Cabernet Franc, people are sort of, they see a Franc and they think of bitter. And, you know, it's known to be blended away into a Bordeaux blend." And I thought, well, I like this wine so much. One day I'm going to have a cellar and I'm just going to make Cabernet Franc. you must be careful what you wish for, because it might just come true. Basically, 4 years later, I founded Raats Family Wines, specializing in Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc.
Why do you think it took us so long as South Africans to discover just how magical Cabernet Franc can be in its own right?
You know, the first Cabernet Franc that was planted in South Africa was actually by Meerlis in the late 70s, early 80s. So we didn't have a point of reference of Cabernet Franc. Our parents' generation didn't grow up with it, and they didn't really know what Cabernet Franc on its own. But luckily, millennials came along, and they were happy to try anything. Grenache and Cabernet Franc and all these sort of Mourvèdre was not new to them anymore. They were happy to try it, and if it was tasted good, they were happy to drink it. So I must say, I've noticed a big change in the sort of demand and the willingness from the newer or younger wine consumer to try different varieties, and if they like it, to stick with it. And so, today there's more than 86 producers in South Africa that regularly make a single bottling of Cabernet Franc from 5 producers 23 years ago.
So what is it about you in particular, about the broader South African Cabernet Franc production landscape, that is allowing us to translate the potential of these grapes into the kind of wine that's now selling so well?
What I did is, before I started Raats, I traveled to Bordeaux, to California, and to find out Italy, to find out exactly where they grow Cabernet Franc successfully. And so I had a good idea what Cabernet Franc needed. It needed relatively poor soils because it grew quite wild. You need it to be well drained. Excess water makes it grow successively, and then you need something white in the soil. And in the Loire Valley, where Cabernet Franc comes from, it's calcaire, limestone, chalk, something white in the soil. And that I found in Polka Dry Hills, in the little ward in Stellenbosch. They had dolomite, decomposed dolomite granite, and these granite soils was just perfect for both Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc. So that is where I started off with Raats Family Wines. And I think the moment you could match the right soil type with Cabernet Franc, as it's extremely soil specific, it's just one of those varieties. If you plant it on the wrong soil or in the wrong climate, it punishes you severely. And but when you get that sort of soil type right, in the right terroir and climate, it changed into something magic. And I always say Cabernet Franc got the elegance of a Burgundy. It's got the spice of the Rhone and the structure of a Bordeaux. So you actually have 3 different areas in one wine, and that's why I fell in love with Cabernet Franc. Of course, it's just such a complex wine, yet it's so elegant and soft and pure, and that minerality that you get from it, and that perfume on the nose, it's just absolutely, it overwhelmed me.
Introduce us to this 2020 Cabernet Franc.
The Dolomite Cabernet Franc was very specific. I wanted to create a Cabernet Franc that was of exceptional quality, but at a very affordable price, to get people to actually drink Cabernet Franc. And especially if people don't know a variety, they're not happy to spend a lot of money on it. But if you can buy a really good Cabernet Franc at an affordable price and it tastes great, and that's exactly what the Dolomite obviously referring to the Dolomite in our granite in Polka Dry Hills, which makes us very unique. So that was the purpose of it. And I must say, in 2019, the Dolomite got 5-star platter, and on top of that, it was voted Cabernet Franc of the Year. And at that stage, at 150 Rand a bottle, it was just, if South Africa opened up, that all of a sudden we didn't have enough for it, because people say, how could this wine become Cabernet Franc of the Year, cost very affordable and of this exceptional quality? So I must say the watershed moment for us in Cabernet Franc was in 2019, and luckily they haven't stopped after that. The next wine is the Family Cab Franc. That was our first, our maiden vintage that we started with was 2001, and this is the 2020. So the wine have a track record of 2 decades, and it's pretty much been rated for the last 20 years in the top 10 Cabernet Francs through any wine writer platter, wherever you go. It's been extremely consistent.
Let's try these two then,
Okay.
and get that comparison. So this is the one that I'm drinking more every day. This is my access point. I've never had Cabernet Franc before. This is my starting point.
Fantastic. And as you can see, you know, that very red berry fruit. It's got this lovely sort of herbaceousness, that oregano, rosemary. This comes from more the valley floor, slightly less clay in the soil, slightly lighter soil, and you can see it is very light in structure. It's extremely accessible, but it's got that beautiful quality aspect to it. And I wish when people drink Dolomite, they drink Cabernet Franc by choice.
I think they probably will, especially after that first mouthful. It does set rather a high benchmark, because you've now got to deliver your next wine, and the moment people know, well, this is a bit more expensive, it's a little bit more of a rarity, it must be better. Better is obviously very subjective. How for you does this wine then justify the jump up to that next price point?
Comes from 2 mountain vineyards. So there's more clay in the soil, it's cooler growing conditions, so you can clearly see the switch over from red berry fruit to blackberry fruit, more darker black cherry, black plum, even the ripe mulberry. Very specific on this wine, you get that cinnamon character, but also that beautiful rosemary. So you have this black fruit surrounded by rosemary spice, and then you just sort of get that little bit of cinnamon coming through. But you can see in the length of the wine and the weight in the palate that it's much more concentrated, it's more structured. And I must say, when God created the earth, He made lamb, rosemary, and Cabernet Franc in one go.
You've given us 2, but then there's the third one, and we know this must be A, very good, and B, very expensive, because you've covered it in wax. And we automatically know this makes the wine stand out as premium. This is not an easy wine to get. In fact, I generally think I'm quite well connected in the wine world. I've still never been able to get hold of any of this. What makes it so rare? What makes it so special?
We planted the Eden Vineyard, which is my farm in Polkadry Hills, and we were the first producer in South Africa to plant high density. That means normal vineyards got 3,000 vines per hectare. This has got 8,000 vines per hectare, so it's planted very close to each other. And what it does, it reduces the yield, and it concentrates, gives small berries, so it concentrates the fruit flavors a lot. This Cabernet Franc is only 0.2 hectares, so we make total production 500 bottles, 1 barrel. Currently, it's one of the highest rated Cab Francs in the world, from around the world, by most wine journalists, sommeliers. But what makes this wine so unique is that, you know, it was not just the first for Raats, but it was the first for South Africa, where somebody released a high density planted single vineyard in just Cabernet Franc. And what you'll see is that a lot of people, when they move up their range, they almost try too hard with their icon or their sort of special wine, that they use too much new oak, they harvest it too right. And we've been very mindful not to do that. So the wine is extremely elegant, but it's got this amazing length, layers of flavor and depth. And what you find in this wine, which you don't find on the Dolomite Cab Franc and the family Cab Franc, is that perfuminess. You get that lovely perfuminess coming through.
In closing, before we go and polish off the rest of these very happily, how proud does it make you? How happy does it make you to see where Cabernet Franc has come from when you started out having these offhand comments at Blogship, and to now being at the forefront of a grape that is doing so much for South African red wine?
It's wonderful, and I mean, for me, it's basically a dream come true, because, you know, when I started off with Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc in 2000, it was just not the 2 uncoolest varieties in South Africa. It was the 2 uncoolest varieties in the world. People really thought I was dotty. You know, they thought I was absolutely stock raving mad. And today people say I was a visionary. But, you know, ultimately for me, it was, I wanted to follow my own dream. I didn't want to live other people's dream, and I didn't want to follow things other people believe in. For me, it was very simple. Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc.
And that is exactly what the Raats Empire now is, together with a red blend named after a little-known member of the family. Lunch beckons with some of South Africa's top wine experts, and they'll be doing exactly what I will be doing, celebrating the fact that 2 decades ago, a guy in Stellenbosch decided he'd like to make some Cabernet Franc, and today it stands out as one of South Africa's leading reds. Winter in Durban. My wife studied in Durban and always raves about the winters here. Pretty hard to argue when you're on this kind of day, although generally when your wife's a Greek lawyer, it's pretty hard to argue anyway. I've got an afternoon to just kick back and relax and enjoy this view, perhaps enjoy a little more wine from JC and his team, and to think back to the 2 stories, the 2 people we've met on the show today, other than, of course, JC. Berene and her absolutely relentless drive to turn this wine dream of hers into a reality, and every single year she does something more as this story just gets increasingly complete, and it's a wonderful illustration of what's possible in South African wine. And then Bruwer, a real champion of South African wine, with Chenin, with Cabernet Franc, focusing so precisely on those 2 grapes and delivering us some extraordinary wine as a result. I might even see if they've got any Raats or any Tesselaarsdal on the wine list here at the Beverly Hills. Big thank you to Miguel and the team at Sogo Sun for sorting us out for a day or 2 here and giving us this view and this weather, and to Berene and to Bruwer and the Shortmarket Club, much appreciated. That's Dan Really Likes Wine for this week. Back again next week, brought to you by Norman Goodfellows. I'll be enjoying my afternoon. I hope you do too. Cheers.